So, we've been having a good time on our little journey through dinosaur cinema, haven't we? Yeah, I think so. But now it's time to get real. Let's stop messing about. It's time to introduce maybe the most influential person in the entire history of dinosaur films. The man, the myth, the legend. Yeah, it's Willis O'Brien. If you do not know who Willis O'Brien is, then oh boy, are you in for a treat. He is nothing less than one of the great masters of stop-motion animation. His most famous work is undoubtedly 1933's King Kong, but he's going to be in this list a lot. The story of O'Brien's life would be one of great innovation and success, alongside personal tragedy and also professional disappointment. There is also legitimate debate about the true credit for one of his earlier works, and we'll get to that in the next video. But his legacy is undeniable. Not just through his films, he would mentor Ray Harryhausen, who would create his own unforgettable dinosaur images alongside much more. He would inspire modern stop-motion masters such as Phil Tippett. Simply put, no dinosaur film can really escape, nor should it, the influence of the images that O'Brien brought to life. But it all started long ago in the nascent days of cinema and stop-motion. Now first, let's talk about stop-motion animation. You almost certainly know what it is, but in case you don't, here's a quick explanation. Stop-motion animation is when physical objects are animated a frame at a time to create the illusion of movement. That's pretty much it. You know, like Postman Pat and his black and white cat. It's a big part of film history, both in terms of fully animated films as well as special effects. It has fallen out of favour somewhat with the advent of CG animation, but many productions still use it for its unique aesthetic, which has this illusory feeling of magic and handcrafted character. Finding the exact origin point of stop-motion photography is difficult. Firstly, as mentioned in previous videos, a lot of the early era of cinema is lost. Also, stop-motion bloomed organically from early effects techniques such as a stop trick. This effect, utilised famously in the work of Georges Méliès, is where the camera is stopped and then restarted to create the illusion of continuous time, while allowing changes to occur in the interim. You know, to create effects such as people disappearing or to skeletons or heads coming off. Where exactly the dividing line is between that kind of trick and stop-motion animation is not quite clear, but a lost film called The Humpty Dumpty Circus is often thought to be the first true stop-motion animation. However, there are other definite, unambiguous early examples of what is considered stop-motion animation, such as Le Theatre du Bob, The Haunted Hotel, The Electric Hotel, The Teddy Bears, The Automatic Moving Company, and the pant-wettingly terrifying The Sculptor's Nightmare. And then there was Vladislav Starovich, whose incredibly bizarre and beautiful stories featuring moving beetles must have blown people's minds. But then Willis O'Brien entered the mix. It is said that O'Brien had worked many different jobs as a young man, but most crucially, he'd worked for paleontologists as a trail guide, which inspired a fascination with dinosaurs. O'Brien made many articulated models, including a dinosaur and a caveman, and experimented with stop motion in order to bring them to life. These experiments caught the eye of theatrical exhibitor Herman Wobbler, who funded O'Brien's first major short, Dinosaur and the Missing Link. The Dinosaur and the Missing Link is a fun little comedy about three cavemen who all wish to court a cave woman called Araminta. Our hero is the most diminutive of the cavemen, Theophilus Ivoryhead. Araminta's father asked the three suitors to collect ingredients for dinner, but Wild Willie, the titular missing link, who we are told via intertitles is the terror of the countryside, is up a tree and out of control. Theophilus goes to the river to fish and witnesses Wild Willie mistakenly attacking the tail of a brontosaurus-like creature because he thinks it's a snake to eat. The brontosaurus creature is not having any of this, as one shouldn't, and the two fight, leading to the unceremonious death of Wild Willie. Theophilus takes credit for the kill and wins the heart of Araminta. The film is mainly a vehicle for a number of visual gags. There's a series of light slapstick beats, mainly in regards to the rival suitors to Araminta, who walk into trees, fall into steaming pots, and in one case get an arrow mistakenly shot into one of their bums. Classic stuff. The arrow in the bum trick still works today. There's also a couple of cheeky knowing parodic gags, such as Araminta saying that she would offer tea, except you know it's not been invented. Typical Stone Age comedy stuff, but the highlight is Wild Willie. Look at this guy. We've all had mornings when we were a bit like this. I love his manic face, and you know what? Kind of reminds me of a certain someone. Yeah, he's Kong, isn't he? Or at least you sense the early spirit of Kong in him, especially in the eyes, that weird stare that is somewhere between lovable, frightening and amusing. The film is titled A Prehistoric Tragedy, and Wild Willie, like Kong, is somewhat of a tragic figure. He didn't mean to pick a fight with the Brontosaurus, but man, he was just too crazy. If only he had relaxed a bit. The Brontosaurus is a cool little creation, with the animation specifically pitched to recall a snake with the neck low to the floor as opposed to raised up. The animation overall is beautifully done for its time, with an admirable focus on comic timing and using certain poses and movements to tease out humour and character. No less than Thomas Edison saw the dinosaur and the missing link and hired O'Brien to make further shorts for the Edison Company to be released under the banner of Conquest Pictures. These included RFD 10,000 BC, Prehistoric Poultry, The Birth of a Flivver, and Curious Pets of Our Ancestors. From my research, The Birth of a Flivver and Curious Pets of Our Ancestors appear to be lost. However, RFD 10,000 BC and Prehistoric Poultry exist and are available. RFD 10,000 BC is quite bizarre. RFD refers to Rural Free Delivery, a program in America that began in the late 1800s and aimed to deliver mail directly to rural locations. See, it all circles back to postmen in stop motion. Anyway, the film depicts such a program in 10,000 BC where a rambunctious and lecherous postman who uses a dinosaur as a mount causes chaos when he deliberately interferes with the mail to create acrimony with romantic couples. It all comes to a head when he's confronted by one of his victims and in a very strange moment is pulled in half by his own Brontosaurus. It's pretty surreal, with the postman's legs running to catch up and a little grisly maybe. Amusingly, when the two halves rejoin, I think you can see O'Brien's hand very briefly. What's notable for this short in terms of dinosaur cinema history is seeing a dinosaur being used in place of a horse. Dinosaurs being used in the way we do modern animals is a staple of Stone Age comedies. As far as I know, this is the first example on screen. Prehistoric Poultry is a little more straightforward. It concerns a Dinosaur, which is gentle and lovable, exactly until the point where it gets threatened by a hunter, ending up flinging them through the air. There's not much to say about this one. The Dinosaur itself is fairly charming. There's a Bugs Bunny vibe with the whole thing, although it of course predates Bugs. The 3 extant animations are available on YouTube and definitely worth watching if you find the time, if only just to appreciate the early work of such an influential figure. RFD 10,000 is available in good quality on the Flickr Alley release of 1925's The Lost World, and don't worry, we will get to The Lost World in due time, but not yet. Next time we're staying with the work of Willis O'Brien. We're going to look at the Ghost of Slumber Mountain, which doesn't just bring dinosaurs to life as cartoonish figures, but as seemingly real creatures. And it's also here where we will introduce another important player in dinosaur film history, Herbert M. Darley. See you then.